I'm Coulter Wonkite. I'm already into the 420, damn it.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.
What's the matter with that cat there?
Must be full of reefer.
Full of reefer?
Yeah, man.
Mean that cat's high?
Sailing.
Sailing?
Lightly.
We now wander off the beaten path with an update from the Reefer Reporter.
Hello and welcome to the Reefer Reporters. Today is August the 27th and we are live. Yes, we are live here at lifestyleradio.net as well as at our sister station, 420radio.ca. I'm Al Graham. And today, News Hawk Green Irene joins me at the news desk. And she's going to help me bring you this week's Canadian and International Reefer Report. Hello, Irene. How are you?
Hey there, Al. I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm looking forward. There's been a lot going on this week in the news.
Yes, there has been. And you're sounding fantastic, I must say.
Well, I'm airing out of a new location. I'm over at protopshelf.com. And, yeah, so they've got a much better signal than I do in the bush.
Yeah, well, that's good. Yeah, it sounds good. I look forward to an uninterrupted show.
Yeah.
All right, now things have been good. Things have been good. So, talking about things in the news this week, I see this new, like, I don't know, it's new on this website, Growth Up. Talking about what's going on with cannabis research here in Canada.
Yeah, there's, thanks to, it says there's thanks to new federal funding, here are 5 of the cannabis studies that are just kicking off and why we need them so desperately. Before we get into that, did you want to talk about the studies that are being done for the Karma Cup?
Do I? Well, we'll talk about that after break.
Okay. Cool.
Right.
I want to hear. I've got a crap load of questions for you. So.
Okay. After break. All
right. We'll get to that. So carrying on with this, they're actually doing 5 studies here, and a lot of people are pretty happy that they'll soon be able to utilize cannabis in public without getting into trouble. But not everybody's completely comfortable with the legalization, given how little they actually know about the safety of cannabis consumption.
Yes, Dr. Tim Holland, president of Doctors in Nova Scotia, he's involved with an association that represents the doctors in that province. And he says that they need more research, and that thus far research has been quite limited, and some of it has been questionable because it was conducted by proponents of the cannabis industry. A big part of the problem has been the lack of funding and also that cannabis was illegal. Which is making it hard to study. And, you can't argue with them there, the fact that there has been a lack of funding and there has been this legal issue.
True. And if your profession and the advice you provide to your customer base is reliant on data-specific research, it's only understandable that this doctor would feel that way. There's not that kind of research available to them as a whole.
Yeah. Well, it's odd that the government complains that there's no research, but yet it's their laws that prevent
it. Exactly. And so now, in 2016, government published a report acknowledging that, yes, there is a lack of solid research on cannabis and how it's going to affect our health, especially long term. So they decided to do something about it.
That's right. The government announced back in January that they were going to devote $1.4 million to cannabis studies, which will be divided between 14 different studies, so basically $100,000 for each product that will be done in hospitals, universities across Canada.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
And there we go. Sorry, I lost you.
Did you? Okay. Well, say some of the studies they're going to see about our young people at risk. That's always being brought up, right? That's one of the studies. Another one is how does cannabis affect different communities? We're seeing in Smith Falls, that's where the largest producer is, and I'm reading all kinds of good reports. With support from the community, from the mayor, and that. So, you're seeing support that way, whereas some places, as we're seeing in Ontario, and we'll be talking about that shortly, is the problem about almost like a dry zone prohibition area. So it will be interesting to see how it affects different communities. Another one is cannabis and driving, is it dangerous?
Yeah, this is one of the things. There's been a lot of controversy about the effects of cannabis use on drivers. Dr. Holland says we need to better understand how cannabis affects reaction time behind the wheel, and this is one of those studies that should be fairly easy to do. I don't think it's going to be that easy to do, but we'll see what kind of tests they're coming up with. And I say that because medicinal users have a significantly higher tolerance over a new user.
Well, they've supplied them with $919,000 to CAMH in order to do a study which involves drivers ranging from the age of 19 to 45. Well,
let's hope that those studies are fair and logistic and rational.
Yeah, exactly.
They say the study should be concluded by June of 2020, and it's going to look at whether THC, which is the main active ingredient in cannabis, has an impact on drivers' reaction time, speed, risk-taking behavior, as well as the ability to anticipate road hazards. It's also going to examine whether THC affects people differently based on their age and gender. So that it's telling me it's not looking at the differences between a recreational user and a medicinal user, though. And I think studies need to be done there as well.
Yeah, well, I guess it will probably, I'm hoping that the medicinal users would be involved and be part of the people that are in that. But yeah, it would be nice to know that they are looking at to make sure that there are medicinal people, even randomly, in there.
Yes, it's in order for it to be a fair study, they have to start with a fair base of consumers.
Yeah.
Okay. Next, and they're looking at what the health benefits are.
Yeah, well, which is nice to see that they have included this, because people often do say, "What about the health benefits?" They're always going for the negatives and never look for the health benefits. I know it's not a lot of money.
Yeah, and I think here they're saying they need large randomized controlled trials that focus on how effective cannabis is in pain management. Well, those of us as patients, we know.
And the last thing that they're going to look at is, should you worry about secondhand cannabis smoke?
Yeah, well, I think that's Dr. Pamela Kaufman. She made comments. She's from the University of Toronto. She recently added questions about secondhand smoke, cannabis exposure to the monitor survey to gather baseline data for her research on levels of exposure to secondhand cannabis smoke, both before and after legalization.
Yeah, so someone's looking into that, so it'd be interesting to see what their results are. It's it's a start. We don't know which way it's going to be. We can't assume either direction.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, burnt plant material is never a good idea for anybody to be inhaling. No. And I mean, we recommend all the time that you stop combusting your cannabis and start vaporizing it. I mean, if you want the inhalation effect, then utilize a vaporizer.
Time will tell and see what happens with recreational, what society as a whole prefers, and some people are leaning towards the beverages, but we'll see.
Yeah.
All righty, let's move on to our next story.
Sure.
All right, and that happens to do about doctors.
The Canadian doctors are fearing recreational cannabis legalization will lead to an outbreak of psychotic symptoms.
That's right. That's exactly what it says. With the national October 27th being the deadline for recreational cannabis legalization, officials are scrambling to prepare for the sudden launch of a new market.
Mm-hmm. Well, across the country, private and public dispensary locations are undergoing renovation to conform to strict provincial and federal rules. A new public ad campaign aims to educate Canadians on cannabis consumption, and lawmakers are combing over the currently contradictory drug enforcement legal code, but pot enthusiasts have long pointed to the undeniable benefits of legalization. The new market leads to an economic boom, and Canadians have more access to the drug with proven medical benefits.
Yeah, well, a lot of people assume that doctors would be supportive of that, but they do have some concerns.
Yes. It's that almost half of data from an MD Analytics shows that almost half of a whopping 47% of Canadian physicians oppose legalization.
Yeah, of those, 87% anticipate a dramatic increase in cases of psychotic symptoms. They say it's known to lead to psychotic situations in some cases, but such widespread fear among the medical community is a stunning rebuke of a drug celebrated for its health benefits.
Right. Indeed, on paper, such intense concern reads more like social anxiety than well-founded criticism. Those same respondents also predict that more cases of substance abuse, anxiety, and depression. So it's true. There needs to be more publicly circulated information about the effects of cannabis, and because there's a lot of misinformation.
Okay, now doctors are saying, give me more research, give me more information, right?
Yes.
So the last line in this article says, talk to your doctor if you're curious about cannabis.
Mm-hmm. And so talk to your doctor. If your doctor seems opposed or uneducated, there are plenty of other doctors available. There's even e-visits online. I mean, you can speak with a doctor online from the comfort of your own home now. A doctor who is educated in cannabis or cannabis consumption can answer your questions a lot more clearly, allowing you, the patient, to make a more informed decision.
Yeah. Well, as you know, the CMA here and the doctors here in Canada, are opposed to it. We just mentioned that. And there are some concerns that there's a chance, what's going to happen down the road with the medical cannabis program here in our country.
Yeah, what is going to happen to that? That's one of the stories we'll be talking about. You're not the first to ask that question.
Well, all right. Let's get right at it. Our next story says why these patients and retailers and researchers say Canada shouldn't drop the medical cannabis post-legalization.
Right, because the CMA says doctors won't be needed in this gatekeeper role, while others say expert oversight is still required. Some researchers, patient advocates, and industry professionals are saying that Canada needs to maintain a distinct medicinal cannabis system following the legalization of cannabis for recreational use, despite the CMA's position that doctors should no longer be gatekeepers. So the CMA is saying we don't want our doctors to have to be responsible anymore.
Yeah, they say there's not enough research. They don't want to be involved.
Right.
No one's educated on it, so...
And, that's frightening from a patient's perspective. We need this is one of those things that's making very volatile waters. Canadian Medical Association said when pot became legal for recreational use on October 17th, two distinct systems for medicinal and recreational products will be unnecessary. I think they're very, very wrong from a patient perspective. You can become very specific, and learning the strains that are most effective for whatever pains or challenges you're facing is essential. And I think the doctors need to, doctors need to be specialized, perhaps, in the cannabis industry. Maybe not all general practitioners. And I see what they're saying. They don't have enough studies. There's nothing to stop. In the meantime, there's nothing to stop you as a patient asking your doctor if it's going to work for you. Will it work for this condition? What kind of dosing, that sort of thing. But you can't expect your doctor, if they're not specialized in cannabis, to have the answers for you.
Yeah, exactly. So, and sometimes that comes down to whether the doctor does get that information or look for some information or gets involved in it. And some doctors just refuse to. So
right.
Well, they say that if the two systems are kept separate, which Health Canada has said will be the case following legalization, the CMA recommended in their 2017 submission a review of the legislation should be conducted within 5 years, and that is what Health Canada has agreed to. They have that up on their website. So in 5 years, they are, so basically 2022, they are going to review that.
Okay, well, yeah, it says, I guess their statement here, I'm just reading their statement. Health Canada recognizes the concerns of the CMA regarding the level of evidence on the risks and benefits of cannabis for medical purposes, as well as on dosage and potential interactions with other medications. Spokesperson for Health Canada said in an emailed statement, measures under the Cannabis Act aim to facilitate research with the goal of improving our knowledge in these and other areas.
Mm-hmm. Well, there is some support for the medical cannabis program within the doctor circles, and that is from the Canadian Nurses Association. And they said that medical cannabis products can vary greatly from products designed for recreational use, but medicinal cannabis usually has a higher concentration of cannabidiol, which does not produce the high, which is what the nurses and the Nurses Association is supportive.
Yeah, and our nurses are their front line. They're the ones that deal most commonly with the patients. Under the current system, patients get authorization to use cannabis from either a physician or a nurse practitioner, and they can order their product online from producers that are, licensed by Health Canada. Nurses have seen what this is doing for the patients, and so I believe that's why they're supporting it so much.
Well,
go ahead.
Yeah, well, the association that has 139,000 nurses in it has advocated to maintain a separate medical system for years. The association is concerned about access, including that dismantling it could encourage producers to focus their efforts on recreational products.
Yeah, and then we see the patients knocked out, or knocked out of the equation. The article not just do we see the patients knocked out of the equation, but patients don't have the guidance necessary to correct or heal or control or manage their cannabis as a medicine. If it is ignored as a medicine and only treated recreational, that's very frightening. I think of a lot of the elderly that use cannabis or that are interested in utilizing cannabis as part of their health regime. She goes on to say, protecting a medical stream helps to ensure that there's going to be product produced for medical purposes and that access to those products won't be minimized and swayed toward a more commercially driven product demand.
That's right. Yeah. Well, that's what could happen, and that's the concern. I've talked to other patients myself that they figure once legalization comes in, studies and things will just become something that won't be such a requirement anymore as what it is right now. They're always saying, let's get the research. And there'll still be research, but, will it be the research that, which, more focused towards the patients?
Exactly. Well, so. I just, further on in the article, Alan Rowak, the Executive Director of Cannabis Council of Canada, said his organization will work with the CMA and physicians to help answer any questions they can. A quote from him says, "We believe that doctors have the skills and the knowledge to really help people understand the best treatment approaches for whatever condition they have. But the biggest challenge is the kind of perception of cannabis and that it creates deep fiscal impacts on patients who are seeing improvements in their lives." So this is something else that brings attention from a patient's perspective. If they're utilizing cannabis medicinally, there is the chance that insurance will cover this down the road. That just like we have our pharmaceuticals covered by insurance plans, we may also have our cannabis covered by an insurance plan. But if it's not divided, how is that going to happen?
I don't know. Well, Dravet Canada, they're an advocacy group for people with the seizures from Dravet's, from epilepsy. And they say that it's crucial for patients that cannabis is considered actual medicine, including funding through health insurance, strict regulation of quality, and a guaranteed supply to avoid disruptions to medical plans. Mm-hmm. They say for epilepsy control, you need specific components. Products must be tested and clearly labeled. The testing and labeling process must be verified. So, they're behind all this. and they want the health insurance coverage as well.
Exactly. And then it goes on. The different cannabis companies have weighed in. The director for communications for the Winnipeg company, soon to be a retailer, Delta 9 Cannabis, said the company agrees with CMA's call for more research and understands that critiques it's raised in the past about difficulty in ensuring precise dosage and quality. A direct quote from him says, if there's no medical system, then there's no real impetus for physicians to learn about cannabinoid treatment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's got to be researched.
Yeah, all they have to do is step forwards instead of stepping backwards. Simply learn about it, get educated.
That's right. Exactly. Well, let's move on to our next story, which is a friend here on Lifestyle Radio, and it's a story to deal with. A patient who is concerned about the merging of the two and says that leaves us vulnerable. And Stephen Stairs, who is a medical user in Manitoba, he is really concerned about it, and that their access to medication could be reduced should medical and recreational cannabis be merged into one system. Mm-hmm. He goes on to say, with medical cannabis having separate categories, it will allow for certain protections. There are always different layers out there to benefit the idea of separating the two.
Yeah. In Manitoba, Stairs noted that the province's Cannabis Retail Act will allow only eligible medicinal cannabis users to grow weed at home once pot sales become legal on October 17th. And again, these are the different benefits this is one of the benefits to a medicinal user versus a recreational. We can't let them get things mixed in together.
Yeah, because if the province has that within the rec law and the medical thing disappears and it's all under one umbrella, patients wouldn't be able to grow their cannabis.
No, exactly.
Even for plants.
Exactly. So let's see, it goes on here in January. Canadian Medical Association, medical and recreation should be one system. Okay, so it was the CMA that argued it.
Yeah.
Instead, let's see, we know what the argument is here.
Yeah, we sure do. Well, Stair says he supports the call for more research into a medical value of cannabis, but believes maintaining Health Canada's registry for medical users would benefit with patient outreach to conduct studies, which is something that would make so much sense. We've had this program for 17 years now, and why hasn't there been a study based on some patients that maybe they're willing to get involved in that?
Fair enough. It says, Health Canada initially opted to leave a separate medical system to access cannabis in place after recreational sales are legal, but the federal department also promised to evaluate the medical access framework. Health Canada recognizes the concerns of the CMA regarding the level of evidence on the risks and benefits of cannabis for medical purposes, as well as on dosage and potential interactions with medications. And that was what was said by a spokesperson in an email.
Yeah. Well, it's good to see Stephen out there speaking up, getting involved in the news as well as others. And we need two systems. We still need to focus on the medicinal benefits for sure.
Absolutely, and I think from a patient's perspective, and as a patient advocate yourself, I'm sure you agree this is the new argument. We cannot allow this to slip into just recreation or all one market. It's not one market. There's very different uses for cannabis. One is medicinal, and one is a recreational vice, a very safe recreational vice.
And I believe I'm right here when I say that the workers behind the recreational counter won't be able to talk to you about the medicinal benefits of the product.
I think you're absolutely right. I think right now, companies, anybody looking at opening up a dispensary for when it becomes legal, a lot of people are trying to be preemptive. As such, they're worried about staffing those counters or staffing those stores. And in staffing those stores, they're going to have to educate their staff And are they going to be able to do that in time for the deadline? It's a huge question. Patients aren't going to get the attention that they need. They're not going to get the quality of information that they deserve, nor are they going to have the resources readily available for them. And they may get filled with a lot of misinformation. It scares me that a patient could be given cannabis that would otherwise make their life 100% better, the quality of their life, and be given the wrong cannabis. That brings them down. You don't want to give somebody with anxiety or high anxiety a high sativa. And what does the kid behind the counter care? He doesn't. But somebody involved in their health and wellness strategy does care and is going to guide them in the right direction. That's
right. Well, let's move on to our next story and talking about supply. In Nova Scotia, they seem to have ordered their cannabis for their stores, 375 million grams.
That is over 8,370 pounds. That's just shy of 10,000 pounds.
5 tons.
Yeah, 5 tons, and that's for opening day. They say they're expecting 15 million grams of sales in the first year, of operation. That's amazing. Nova Scotia is really, our East Coast has really taken a preemptive, positive approach to getting all this set up and being ahead of the game for when the rules come out, they're ready to play. Yeah. And, I think that it scares me. They're probably going to be in a better situation as we go through this. They say, okay, the first purchase orders were placed with 14 Canadian cannabis vendors, including 2 from the Atlantic region. The orders include 282 cannabis products from flowers, seeds, pre-rolls, oil, and gel caps, as well as 21 accessories.
Yep, they say that they believe that they have done their homework and they have ordered 78 different strains that will provide customers with varied products. Yep.
And you know what? It seems to me that they really have done their homework. When the NSLC, so that's the Nova Scotia Liquor Control Board, is that what that is? I can never remember what the NLC is. Anyway, what the acronym, right? That's it. Says it chose the strains and amounts based on sales data from North American markets, product availability, and a supplier's ability to provide continuous supply.
Yeah, well, they have flexibility to change the lineup of products as demand changes, and they plan on adding more Nova Scotia products to the inventory once more producers are licensed through Health Canada.
Yeah, and through my show on Cannabis Conversations on Rogers, my television program, I've been dealing with and talking with growers and licensed producers. I had James Conroy, an LP wannabe in the Atlantic Coast, and they're getting excited. They've set up all of their programs, and I think we're going to see a lot of micro grows happening.
Well, I know in another story, Cress Enns from Farmers Assist, he sent out a message to them and wondered, craft cannabis people are losing out on an opportunity. They could be involved in all this. And I know that Al Rapp, our producer, he got involved, and he sent out a message, and he got a response back from them.
Care to share?
Sure. Okay. They say that no Nova Scotia licensed producer has the required licenses from Health Canada to both produce and sell recreational cannabis, but they're close. We're in ongoing conversations. As soon as they can sell to us, we will provide local products to our customers. So you would have to be a minimum a legal licensed federal micro grow producer.
Okay.
And they'll start selling to you. Yeah, they'll start buying.
Excellent. So there's opportunities coming up. We just gotta pay really close attention.
Yes. Yeah.
And our next story brings us right there. Ontario pot supply decision, a big opportunity for smaller producers.
Yes. Ontario, they have supply agreements to start off with 26 different producers. It involves some large, the everyday, well-known producers that you hear on the news all the time, as well as some as well as some smaller companies.
Right. So it was a long-awaited announcement. It offered investors some clarity, allayed previous concerns about how concentrated the supplier list would be, said Russell Stanley, the analyst. I just want to quickly, because I know there was the Ontario Cannabis Store, the government entity tasked with distribution of legal pot for adult use, announced late Monday that it had signed more than 24 initial supply agreements to stock up its online retail shelves.
Yeah, and that will be online. Just remember that, people. It's just online. It's no storefronts here in Ontario till at least April
of 2019. I am a big cheerleader right now for the GYO. I mean, grow your own. If you're a patient, if you're a home recreational user, just grow your own. Keep in mind that because all sales in Ontario are online, this is recordable. There's no cash sales. And I don't mean that in an illegal way, but you will be registered as a pot purchaser.
Mm-hmm. I also... Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so that gives the government a good number of months there. That's 6 months in which they can analyze and determine, hey, no, we're going to keep the sales strictly for the province, or no, we are going to open up to the moms and pops or somebody who wants to open up to, and I don't mean moms and pops, not just anybody. You have to go through the processes, but before opening it up to the private sector, I suspect that they're just going to do analysis first and decide whether or not they even want to. I feel a monopoly here, and they're just appeasing the public in the meantime.
Well, time will tell. Time will tell. We just don't know.
Well,
all right, let's do one more story, and then we'll go for break.
Okay. What do we have next? What you need to know about buying cannabis online in Ontario as soon as it's legal. All right. Well, besides the fact that you are recorded, every purchase will be recorded. Keep that in mind. Everything done online is recorded.
Yes, that's right. That's right, it is. So no matter what, it's going to be recorded.
Yes. In just a few weeks, people in Ontario will be able to legally buy cannabis for the first time, and we're learning more now about exactly how that system's going to work.
Yes, right. They said as far as which companies made the list and who are the big players, a lot of the players that made the list, the Auroras of the world, the Canopies of the world, the Fira, Canatrust, they're all, well known, but then there's also smaller companies that made the list, which include companies like Beely from Hamilton and others.
Yeah, well, Jay Rosendahl, co-founder and president of Business of Cannabis. As the Ontario market develops and matures and more products come online, the black market will dwindle and dwindle further. He says, were there any suppliers included on the list that surprised you? He was asked. Let's see here. It's more about the overall number that was included that surprised him. He thinks that the Ontario cannabis, we don't want to have some of the challenges we think other provinces are going to have. We want to have a steady supply, and we want to have a variety. We want to have it from the way they get. So they came up with a list of 26, which is a relatively large number to supply their stores in October. Yes. They want to ensure that there's full supply and lots of variety.
Yeah, well, the names of this list include some well-known household brands, and in some cases it will, some cases it won't be, and that's, well-named brands, the Canopies of the world, as I mentioned, the big companies, and then the Belize and the smaller companies that people don't know will be involved as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it says, I think it's going to be much more like wine.
Yeah.
Than something like I only drink Ketel or one vodka, one specific type of vodka. And I think so too. I think, and I've said that for a long time, cannabis is a lot more like wine. Some you're going to like, some you're not. Some you might like, your roast beef cooked in wine. You might like can of butter better than butter. I think it's until it hits the market and until people are utilizing cannabis and normalizing it in their everyday activity, we're not going to be able to set brands. We can probably try and make them as marketers, but I think it's futile effort at this point.
Yeah, that's right. Well, all we can do is wait to see what happens. And, be vocal when we need to be vocal. So, well, let's take that break.
Alrighty.
Okay. This week we're going to hear an old news report on CBC on tumbling stocks. Then Irene and I will be right back after you hear about the devil in Jamaica. You're listening to the Reefer Reporters. We are live here at lifestyleradio.net.
Hey, this is Cheech. And this is Chong. And you're listening to Lifestyle Radio. What is it? Lifestyle Radio. Say it one more time. 420 Radio? Ooh.
Hang up and try again.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
Marijuana stocks took a tumble today after the U.S. federal government rolled back an Obama-era policy that paved the way for states to legalize pot. Shares of Canopy, Canada's largest marijuana company, fell 10%. Aurora ended the day 8% lower, and Aphria tumbled more than 13%. Attorney General Jeff Sessions said in a memo that federal prosecutors should be able to choose whether to devote resources to marijuana cases. For more on this and a roundup of the day's top business stories, we're joined now by Ian Lee. He's a professor at the Sprott School of Business, and he's in Ottawa. So, Ian, Jeff Sessions, Attorney General in the U.S., says, yes, we're going to not possibly have as legalized a situation with marijuana, and Canadian pot stocks fall. Can you explain?
Sure, because, the United States, of course, we know is the largest market in the world, the largest economy in the world. And what they just did today, what General Jeffrey Sessions, the Attorney General, is doing, Chief Law Enforcement Officer, is to introduce massive uncertainty now into the marijuana market. And businesses don't like uncertainty. And so now it's not clear. That famous old adage, who's on first? I'm on first. No, you're on second. Is it legal? Well, it's legal in California, but maybe it's not legal federally. And so it's going to create blooming confusion. And markets don't like that. And so it's going to affect the share values, as we just saw today, and until some certainty and clarity emerges so people know what the rules of the game are.
Well, we know, though, that pot is scheduled to be legalized here in Canada in the summer. So presumably, for all these companies' stocks to fall, they had the intent to be exporting a lot of their product to the U.S. Is that right?
In fact, that's exactly how I interpreted the data, that the market is, because, of course, these stock prices are always anticipatory of where the market's going, where the company is going. And so the fact that this happened suggests to me that they're saying, hey, these actions in Washington are going to hurt these companies, both American and Canadian companies.
The 5th annual Karma Cup Cannabis Festival and Industry Trade Show is an elite medical cannabis, hash, edibles, topical, and heady glass competition. It also includes live music, speakers, glass marketplace, vendor village, exhibitors, and much more. Hand-picked judges evaluate many categories including bud, extract, CBD products, and disposable vape pens. This outdoor rain or shine event will be held in downtown Toronto on September the 8th and 9th, but its secret location won't be released until September the 7th at 4:20 p.m. via social media. The Karma Cup was founded in 2013 by Sarah Sunday in order to create a cannabis-positive space for growers, producers, business owners, industry experts, and their fans in order to gather and judge the country's best cannabis and cannabis products on an even playing field. Please join us, be part of Canada's largest ticketed Cannabis Pride Festival, the 5th annual Karma Cup Cannabis Festival and Industry Trade Show on September the 8th and 9th in downtown Toronto. For more information, please go to thekarmacup.com. Are you looking for cannabis news, education, and people's opinions? Are you looking to learn what Canadian and international cannabis advocates are doing, not only now, but what got them to this point in their lives, and what does the future hold for them? Do you want to learn how patients are using cannabis as their daily medication, or learn how their cannabis use helps them with their medical condition? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then I'm going to suggest to you to tune in to Lifestyle Radio. Catch their live weekly shows and have your questions and concerns answered and find the experience you're looking for. Monday, catch your weekly news broadcast with the Reefer Reporters. Then on Wednesday, get several hours worth of cannabis public education. We get things started with cannabis and coffee with marijuana. Then tune in and catch Pottawa with Russell Barth, who calls himself the world's angriest pothead. Finish up your evening with the award-winning Pace Radio Show with Al Graham and joint host Kim Cooper and Alicia Yashishin. No week would be complete without tuning in to Friday night's program, the 420 Radio Show featuring Al Rapp and the 420 Radio crew, Mary Jane Baker and Marcel Gignac. Cannabis is a lifestyle, and you can catch all your cannabis lifestyle information right here at lifestyleradio.net or at our sister site, 420radio.ca.
The devil went to Jamaica. He was looking to sell some weed. He was doing fine. They were standing in line. It was excellent weed indeed. He came across a young man who was likewise peddling pot, and the devil slid down the beach to the kid and said, "Boy, let me tell you what. I guess you kind of figured I'm a reefer head, of course. And after all this time, I guess that I'm a connoisseur of sorts. Now, your stuff smells okay, but this could tranquilize a horse. I'll bet $1 million in cash against your stash because I think mine's better than yours." The boy said, "My name's Johnny, and you ain't smoked nothing yet. One hit of this grass will kick your ass. You got yourself a bet. Johnny, roll a ball of hash and make sure it's the bomb, because the devil's got the kind of stuff they smoked in Vietnam. You'll get $1 million smackaroos in cash if you can cope, but if you can't, the devil will get your dope."
We're back from our break in our medication session, talking about sessions. Irene, I got to tell you, people who have got those Karma Cup judging bags this year, they have so much testing ahead of them. Yesterday I had a marathon session. Today I had another marathon session.
Oh, that's awesome. You have to tell me, I have so many questions with respect to the Karma Cup. Karma Cup is a big event for cannabis enthusiasts, yes?
Yes.
Now, what exactly happens at this? I realize it's a couple of days event. When's it running from? The 8th and the 9th, I know for sure, but okay.
Yes, yeah. It has different things that are happening, like there's vendors. There's going to be speakers. I believe some music this year. This year, it's being, from my understanding, it's being increased into a festival type setting, and it's going to be bigger and better than the shows in the past. And when it comes to the judging, these are all entrants in piles of different categories.
I was just going to say, there's all kinds of different types of entries for the Karma Cup.
There's buds, there's indicas, sativas, hybrids, there's different concentrates, solventless. There's pre-rolls, there's lotions, there's edibles. It's somewhere around 125 to 130 different items.
That's amazing. I've been watching you as you're doing. Yeah.
2 bags, a bag of test products and a bag of swag.
That's phenomenal. That is just amazing. I'm so disappointed I didn't get in on the judges panel this year, but next year I'm here, Green Irene.
Yeah, okay.
You guys had everything from, you're saying buds, concentrates, there was edibles as well.
Edibles, personal lube. There's a crystal stuff for a beverage.
Wow.
So you can make a drink.
And you guys get like a journal where you're actually assessing this.
Yes.
What kind of things are you judging these, and how do people get to be entered into?
Well, you got to go to the karmacup.com website in order to find out the judge. Karmacup.com, yeah. The questions are things that say, like, when it comes to the cannabis, how smooth is it? Does it burn? How does it burn? Taste. Smell, medicinal effects.
Is
it the right category? And then, concentrates, it just goes
Well,
on.
you were.
And then
I noticed
you enter all this information into your journal because you literally take this book with you. Okay, it lives beside you. And you take this book with you, and you're recording this stuff, and then you got to enter it all in online, so that they can evaluate, determine the winners off your ratings.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I can't wait to see who wins this year. So far, what's your favorite? Do you have a favorite yet? Did you find a new
I haven't got
strain?
everything
Maybe that's
done
what
yet.
I should ask you.
I've got a couple. I got a couple smiley faces and stuff inside the journal.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. Good. Can't wait to see it complete.
Yeah. All right. Well, as our commercial says, go to thekarmacup.com. Check out more about that. Well, Irene, you and I, we still have lots to cover, so let's get right back at the news.
Yeah, let's get back at it. Peterborough is thinking about banning pot shops in their area. Municipal politicians faced with voting whether to allow cannabis stores in Peterborough should ask themselves a simple question. Now, all municipalities, for the record, should be asking themselves this question: would they vote to go back to alcohol prohibition?
That's right. Yep. Legalized cannabis is a big change that requires a broader new set of laws and regulations, but cannabis is already here.
Yeah.
It's already in our schools. It's at parties. It's on the streets. It's in houses of millions of Canadians. So what's changing is the safe and sale production of cannabis, and they believe it's a step forward. So this is an editorial that is for cannabis legalization.
Absolutely. The non-medical cannabis industry is a very large industry. It's got an estimated sales of 5 billion to about 1 million customers, and it's currently illegal.
That's right. And it obviously isn't working for controls.
Just like prohibition.
Yeah, since the 1920s, back then didn't drive away the alcohol, underground alcohol industry, and they brought it above ground, and that's what's going on here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so Prime Minister Trudeau's Liberal government introduced its legalization bill in the House of Commons mid-2017. In a perfect world, the Liberals would have included a national framework that would have been applied consistently from St. John's to Victoria across the country. But in the real world of federal provincial stresses and territorialism, that might have produced enough heated opposition from premiers to send the whole process up in smoke.
Well, he brought legalization on partly due to polls showed in recent years 70% of Canadians support legalization. But the big question is what form and what does it all entail, right?
Right. And people are asking, Ford here in Ontario, he took a page from the federal Liberal playbook, and this is what he's done is he's said, okay, well, yeah, we're going to do it this way, and we're going to let each of the individual municipalities, cities like Peterborough, decide what they want based on their community. Don't want a store in your city, you talk to your mayor and your council, in other words. So he manages to deflect criticism from the minority who oppose legalization.
Yeah, send it to the municipal councils to decide.
Right.
And they go on here to say that they believe that the cannabis store ban in Peterborough would be ineffective, and the neighboring township would just eventually just allow sales, and stores would be located nearby, and people are still going to get access to it. So by banning it, it's not going to change anything.
Well, no, exactly. And, I take a look at the small towns and areas in which I live myself personally, because, our municipal government is the one where we have the most influence and the most effect. But if we're not voting, that council can make a decision willy-nilly. And it can really mess up a lot of potential people. My point is, Midland, Penetang, LaFontaine, Tiny Tay, our area is very tight. It's less than 2 minutes from one township to the next township. I can see a lot more money filtering into any one of those towns that agree to have cannabis retail versus the community that won't allow it.
Oh, for sure. You got the property taxes by the business of being in there. You got the fact that, It's creating employment for that community, and it's bringing people into that community who are spending their dollars elsewhere as well.
Yeah, and this article ends with the most truest statement I've read, and that's municipal councils that kill the legal supply chain from banning local stores won't be protecting their communities. They'll be helping, and it says here they'll be helping the criminals. Here, I think it'll be helping the community next door instead. You're feeding your neighbor instead of yourself.
Yes, yeah. So, and there's been other articles that have been written as well that are telling communities don't opt out.
No, exactly.
This is an editorial from Peterborough's, but there's also been other opinion articles from other locations saying don't do this. And I've seen some Facebook groups of different locations where they're discussing cannabis within their municipality. One of them was Stone Mills.
Yeah. Yeah, and a few of them have been popping up, like new Facebook groups specific to that subject. This is because municipal voting is coming up very soon. I mean, around here, everybody's getting ready, right, for the new election, for municipal elections.
That's right.
I can see a lot of political platforms being built on cannabis.
Yeah, it's something that I have seriously thought about going to one of these all candidates meeting and getting up and asking that question. What's the municipality's plan when it comes to cannabis? Are you going to opt out, or are you going to allow a store to be within our boundaries?
Well, I think it's very important that you get engaged, that you, your next door neighbor, me, my next door neighbor, everybody get engaged. We stopped paying attention to our town councils because we got busy being little bees. And too often I hear the gum flapping on the front or the back porch about how council's gotten away with this and they're doing that and they're doing that. Why can't we have it? And you know what? You're not down there making the difference. That's where you need to say it. Saying it to your next door neighbor, bitching about choices that are made on your behalf in your community isn't doing you any favors unless you are talking to the people that make the difference. And those are the people who are on council.
Yeah.
And that's where you need to make your statement and take your stand. It's not with the next door neighbor. It's not with, your brother down the road having tea. It's with council members themselves. It's being engaged in your community and having passion about the subject that matters to you, sharing that passion, speaking openly, and educated.
Yeah, well, I found one of our local meetings is being held on a non-radio night, so I will be able to attend.
Good.
I'll let you know down the road how I make out.
Yeah, and you know what? Don't allow yourself to get frustrated. There's a lot of minds all trying to come to one decision. That's impossible in a marriage. Never mind a council of 15 different people.
That's right. Well, talking about people of other minds, we don't just always talk about pro-cannabis here on this new show, and that's highlighted in this next article for sure, Irene. What do you think?
Yes, it is. Parents, be aware of marijuana. God, I love how that starts.
Yes. There are approximately 13,000 pothead whales in the ocean surrounding Newfoundland and Labrador. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and his government, by legalizing the sale and use of cannabis, will quickly create and surpass that number of pothead whales with pothead humans in Newfoundland and Labrador.
Now, I mean, if this isn't more, what's the name of the show? Reefer Reporters. But I mean, doesn't this just scream reefer madness to you? And I mean, it starts right by that hyperbolic media blitz, that propaganda. Let me get into your head. Let me make something stick and sink there. This article is ridiculous, but it goes on. And the sources that they're using, research has shown that, now remember, this is Canadian, but research has shown that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency states that drug overdoses kill more people than traffic accidents and gun incidences. Okay, the DEA is, their opinions have been questionable with respect to cannabis for quite some time, if I'm not mistaken, since their inception.
Yes, you've got that right. Yeah, one of their past leaders, Michelle Lionheart, she there's quite an episode online of her trying not to answer questions. But go ahead.
Yeah, and then their second source, Dr. Ed Gojek, an American addiction psychiatrist. He states that youth who smoke marijuana do worse in school and have 2 times the dropout rate of non-users, and their IQs are permanently lowered. Well, I mean, new research, and I say new research because it was just finally allowed to be released due to the lack of prohibition. I mean, they haven't considered any other factor other than cannabis. They haven't considered the environment that these kids were in. They haven't considered, and we now know that ADHD is relieved. We know that Asperger's is relieved. We know that a lot of childhood conditions that prevent them from learning productively, according to scholastic standards, are that were affecting their studies with the use of cannabis, the proper strains of cannabis, of course, under medicinal surveillance. These kids are able to concentrate more efficiently and their grades are improved. So, when we're reading research analysis or know the source, I mean, go to the source.
Well, as a lot of people know, Canada our youth do lead the industrial world in cannabis consumption, and we seem to be doing fine.
Yeah.
Yep.
We're not.
Well, this letter goes on to say that. This letter goes on to say that Prime Minister Trudeau and his government are aware that these research findings yet are prepared to destroy the brains and lives of thousands of Canadian children in this generation and generations to come. This legalization of cannabis must be stopped by replacing this government, which has done more to destroy the moral fiber and values of Canadians than any government in the past.
Oh, for God's sakes. I'm so glad it ends with opinions expressed in letters are those of the authors, not the Telegram or its parent company. Thank God. Because, I mean, this opinion, opinions are like farts. Just because you have one doesn't mean you should be going in and airing it in public.
That's right. That's right. Because, that last thing about fear-mongering going on, and I'm assuming that they're talking about people who are smoking cannabis, because in our next story, we're not talking about cannabis smoking at all. We're talking about using it as a topical.
Right, which is one of the many numerous medicinal, most valuable ways for anybody with pain suffering, including arthritic pain, is to use a topical ointment. There's no psychotropic high associated with it. And because it doesn't, when you're using topicals, they don't break the blood-brain barrier. It means not only do you not get high, but you won't test positive for THC. So, this article, How Cannabis Topicals Work and Why They're Not Yet Regulated, is a very interesting article.
Go ahead. It's going to be at least a year. It's going to be at least a year after this legalization. So you're looking at probably, Christmas of 1919 into early 2020?
Right. And the reason why is because, the concern about topicals is that it's how they're manufactured. I mean, you, me, and everybody else can make these at home. I guide my clients all the time in how to make their own topicals using their own cannabis so that they have it available to them. Because it's easy enough, but because it's not right, it's manufactured differently for everybody. There are concerns that the cannabis that topical creams contain could have traces of pesticides, fungus, contaminants. That's what one of the Dr. Lydia Hatcher, a physician and associate clinical professor at McMaster's, was saying. So how easy is it going to be to get legitimate medical approval for cannabis for a topical?
Well, they're going to have to follow along the Health Canada regular guidelines if you're doing anything for any prescription drug.
Yeah, even with the imminent legalization of recreational cannabis to approve a patient for medical cannabis, Hatcher told Joseph that doctors receive no education on cannabis in medical school, and if you don't know anything about it, the likelihood is you're not going to give a prescription.
Yeah, well, she goes on to say that once topicals are regulated, the cannabis industry will see some change in how the product is viewed by the public.
Yes.
And and I completely agree.
Yeah, and it's just going to take time because, again, cannabis topicals treat so many conditions. If you're, Joseph says here, if you're able to buy a cannabis topical over the counter without any prescription, and it is indeed certified by your own government and scientists to help with certain aches, pains, and skin conditions, then the cannabis as a wellness product gains a lot more legitimacy.
Oh yeah, and you know. You in your advocacy work, and me in my advocacy work, we see people discovering it often, and once it's out there in the public for easier access, more and more people are going to obviously see the benefit as well.
Can I share a little story on this?
All right,
I'll make it quick. So I have this elderly couple. He's not opposed to utilizing cannabis. She's terrified of it. When I say elderly, I'm talking over 80.
Okay.
So he has really bad hips, and they're considering hip surgery, but because of his age, it's questionable. So he says, let me try some of that cream. She says, oh, I don't want to try it, though. She has what's called witch's claw, so her hands are all cramped up from the arthritis. And she says, I don't want to try any, but he can't rub it on his own hips, so she rubs it on his hips for him. About 3 weeks go by, and she comes to me for more cream. When she comes to me for more cream, she says, look at that. She's got her hand up straight to my face. And I'm thinking, my God, she's going to hit me. But what she was pointing out was that her hands had opened up straight for the first time in forever. Now, I should also point out that both of these people have their medical card for cannabis. I taught them how to use the herb that they bought and infuse it into coconut oil to make their own topical.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a commercially produced one, but it was one that they were able to use, and now she uses it on a regular basis. I'm very, and her hands, she was able to pick up her grandson without wincing and crying, or her great grandson, and it's a beautiful reward. So I think as it reaches the market, and the legitimacy of it will become, more popular.
Correct, because more people see the benefit, more people are going to try it, and by just that one example, many others will see the benefit that she's gone through, and they'll want to try it. So,
exactly.
All righty. Well, let's move on to our next story. We're heading to Israel. Oh, yes. Over there's a company that's teamed up with another company from Switzerland, Pure Cannabis Research, and they focus on different varieties. And these two are going to get together, and they have formed a partnership that would allow more rapid development of cannabis varieties than the current industry standard.
Yeah, and when I actually took a minute to very quickly see what they were testing and how they were testing it, I love what they're doing. Israel has definitely been in the advanced society in studying cannabis, and it's so on and so forth. But they're talking about developing, the research study is going to, the research will study the metabolite profiles of cannabis, which are key to the ability to target specific therapeutic uses such as pain relief and sleep support, which are the two biggest complaints of society, as well as providing flavor profiles, so it can get very specific that way. It can be used when manufacturing energy drinks and tobacco alternative products. Pure Cannabis Research provides safe, non-addictive CBD-based products for tobacco alternatives, beverages, cosmetics, and other uses for the Swiss and European markets, said Stevens, CEO of Pure Holding Group, which is the parent company of Pure Cannabis.
Yep, they can target specific, tailor-made for customer needs.
It is. So it's literally designer weed. Now, the only thing that scares me about that from a medicinal perspective, and I realize that the only reason we've advanced this far is because of science. Sometimes you've got to go right back to the basics, and cannabis is a weed, is a weed, is a weed. Now, can we start screwing around with that and playing God? Well, we are, so questioning it isn't an option anymore. It says pure cannabis research will use NR genes technology for the assembly of multiple cannabis genomes, the statement said, and to create the world's first cannabis pangenome. Did I pronounce that properly?
Looks about close.
Basically means the entire gene set of all the strains of a species.
That's right. The project will create a collection of sequences that will provide unique and essential insights into the natural genetic diversity of cannabis, the statement said, and identify markers for key traits within the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The importance of this study is the recognition of the importance of this cannabis in specific and hemp in general is growing globally, whether for a plethora of medical problem or as a valuable renewable resource with so many eco-friendly uses, Gil Ronan, CEO, said in a statement. Cannabis is being increasingly recognized as the most viable solution for many health problems.
We've been saying it for years.
Yeah, we have.
You gotta wonder, was it the original snake oil that was in the back of that wagon that was being pulled by the horses around the country? Because it cured so many things, right?
It does. It really, and that's just it. The reason it does, though, is when you look at how it interacts with our endocannabinoids.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
This is an ancient system. It is unique to the individual as the individual is itself. And when you see the collaborative effects of utilizing the cannabis plant and the cannabinoids gleaned from it for correcting and fixing the ailments in the endocannabinoid system, the compensation, how it works together is just too phenomenal.
It is, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. They work together. Well, talking about some phenomenal stuff, we're always hearing about, oh no, if you legalize cannabis, the youth consumption rates are going to go up. And what they're finding in California is that the use of cannabis declined among their teens there.
Yes. They said, despite the dawn of the new era legalizing recreational use of cannabis by adults, cannabis use among middle and high school students continued to decline in California in 2016 and 2017. Only 4.2% of 7th graders reported ever using cannabis, according to the 16th biennial survey, which was conducted between 2015 and 2017, and it was released this week.
Yeah, well, researchers found a marked decline in teen cannabis use over the past 4 years from 10% of grade 7ers in 2011-13 survey to 7.9% in this 2013-2015 one. Similar declines were found among students in grades 9 through 11.
Yeah. Pro-cannabis groups claim that the latest survey is evidence that cannabis legalization does not lead to increased use among school-age children. And it's, I don't think it will. Ellen Comp, Deputy Director of California at NORML, said she was encouraged by the survey results, especially the fact that the youngest age group showed the most dramatic declines. The survey results fly in the face of speculation that legalization would lead to increased use among children. Recreational use hasn't caused any increase, and it's actually causing a drop.
Yeah,
I hope.
Go ahead.
No, go for it.
Okay, but the researchers who conducted the survey said the jury is still out on whether cannabis legalization in California is causing the recent decline. So
at least is it causing the recent decline or isn't it? The point is, if there was an increase, they'd absolutely associate it to the legalization.
Would.
So if you're gonna throw these numbers out there, they better balance the scales. Give us both sides of the coin.
They say that the past 2 survey cycles suggested declines in the use of alcohol, cannabis, and other drugs, as well as frequent and heavy use, such as binge drinking. The latest survey found that current use of alcohol and cannabis and other drugs within the last 30 days had declined up to 6% points across all 3 grade levels.
Well, it goes on to say as well, though, that there was also a decline in the general perception that cannabis and alcohol are easy to get, and that there is evidence that the student disapproval of alcohol and cannabis use has increased, most notably for the younger students.
So, perception that it was easier to get. So are they finding it harder to get now that it's being legalized?
Yeah, I think they're saying it's their perception of how easy they thought it was to get compared to now that, so their ideas, so they're recognizing that it's more difficult to get, so they're just not bothering, is more or less what that's saying.
Yeah.
Somebody, Harrington says here, I'd like to think this county is making concerted effort through its Health Action Council and Plan, which basically delineates education as the primary intervention for social drug and alcohol usage. So he's basically saying he'd like to think that its education has empowered these students to make wiser decisions based on their ages and stages in life.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah, and Comp agreed. Education is key to getting kids to delay the use of alcohol and cannabis until they are of age. I think kids are figuring out that it's smarter to stay away from the mind-altering substances and cigarettes while they're still young.
Oh, this is yeah. Well, it should. I don't know. I don't know about you, Irene, but the first time I ever smoked a cigarette, I know I got quite the buzz.
Yeah, I don't remember. It was that long ago. Honestly.
Same here. Almost 50 years ago. I was young when I started smoking cigarettes. What can I say?
Yeah, I would love to quit, and I would give just about anything to wake up tomorrow and not be a tobacco smoker. I just have no idea how to do that. And I know there's a bazillion tools out there. I don't need the lecture. I tell myself on a regular basis. And one of these days I'll say, hey, no, I don't smoke anymore.
Well, some people have been able to do that with the assistance of cannabis as long as you got a supply. It doesn't replace the nicotine, but it'll help with the hand motions and stuff like that. There's other parts to it, right? So, alrighty. And what else is happening in California? Not only is the teenage use going down, but they're also, the lawmakers want to pass a bill to erase the old cannabis convictions.
Yes, this is wonderful. The state estimates almost 220,000 cases are eligible for erasure or reduction. A bill requiring California prosecutors to erase or reduce tens of thousands of cannabis criminal convictions was approved by state legislature on Wednesday and now awaits Governor Jerry Brown's signature.
Yeah, when the voters passed Proposition 64 in 2016 to allow adult use of recreational cannabis, they also eliminated several pot-related crimes. The proposition also applied retroactively to cannabis convictions, but provided no mechanism or guidance on how those eligibles could erase their convictions or have felonies reduced to misdemeanors. And that's sort of a discussion that's happening here in Canada as well. Is people want amnesty for past convictions, and the government still hasn't figured it out.
Right, and I think it's to some degree it's going to be very challenging to figure out exactly who is eligible. I think to figure out who has the time, who's going to make the time to sit down and go through all of these cases, because there are far too many of them.
Wow.
And yeah, the criminal. Having a criminal record has so much detrimental influence in every aspect of your life. And for, buddy that went to jail for a half a joint kind of thing. Seriously? But who's going to figure all this out?
Yeah. Well, the California State Department of Justice estimates that almost 220,000 cases are eligible for erase or reduction. The DOJ also has until July the 1st, 2019 to compile a list of eligible cases and forward it to the appropriate district attorney's offices. And then they have until July 1st, 2020 to decide which cases on that list they want to challenge.
Wow. Yeah, it goes on. Since the passage of Proposition 64, most California district attorneys have said they didn't have the resources to review their records to identify eligible cases. San Francisco County District Attorney George Gaskin is one of a few prosecutors who did that review and found 3,000 misdemeanor convictions eligible for erasure dating back to 75. He's still reviewing nearly 5,000 more felony cases for possible resentencing.
That's a lot of people.
My God.
That's
The bill was, it is. This bill will take those people off the prohibited list, save us time and money, Anderson said. But what's it going to take to get there first? You know, there's a lot.
There is a lot.
Yeah.
There is.
Canada's going to be facing the same challenges in a very similar capacity, you know?
Yes, exactly. Well, Irene.
Lots of new jobs.
That's right. Well, let's move on. Talking about jobs, let's move on to our last story of the day.
There are cannabis users being turned away from the cannabis industry jobs. This is American, for the record.
Yes, correct. This is a U.S. write-up. Exactly.
Because here in Canada, things are a little different.
Yeah, there is some of this here in Canada, too, where people within the community can't get involved because they have a criminal record of some sort.
Yeah, well, you know, and what they're saying here, one of the first rules of operating a successful black market drug dealing operation, and, you know, I like how they say that because it's basically in any business. If you're running a restaurant, you know, or a corner store, it doesn't matter. It's just one of the first rules, period, is you never, okay, so in the black market, they're saying never get high on your own supply, but you don't utilize your own supply. Well, it turns out this thug life ethos is being practiced by parts of the legal cannabis industry. Medical cannabis cultivation facilities, dispensaries, and other pot-based businesses operating in the post-prohibition landscape are reportedly rejecting job applicants with a strong admiration for weed. Even those marred by the cannabis-related criminal convictions are often turned away.
Yep. The overall message is that while stoners and potheads, in quotations, may be the ones responsible for the present state of cannabis reform in America, they are, in a lot of cases, not welcome to work in the industry.
Yeah, that's really disturbing. Even, you know, well, let's go on here. In Florida, where the state's medical cannabis market is just now starting to build some momentum, cannabis operations are in a frenzy to hire bud tenders and cultivation experts and various other team members to assist in serving the hundreds of thousands of patients expected to participate in the program. The state already has around 147,000 patients in the pool, so finding quality, reliable talent to run the show is top mind for most human resource managers.
That's right. Well, however, the process is not going smoothly as expected. Many of these businesses are simply refusing to hire cannabis users and people with drug-related blemishes on their record, regardless of their qualifications. Some high standards have disqualified the majority of job applicants. Yeah, roughly only about 10% of those who apply for positions in Florida's cannabis market are employable. Only 10%.
Well, this is not entirely the fault of the cannabis industry. Florida law dictates that all employees of medical cannabis operations be felony free. So while it's conceivable that a job applicant with a misdemeanor for pot possession could receive the green light to grow and sell cannabis in the legal sector, anyone convicted of engaging in these activities on a pre-legal scene can be automatically blacklisted.
Wow. Well, in an attempt to combat this borderline hypocrisy, I can't get it.
Hypocrisy.
Some job recruitment firms like hemp staff are telling people interested in securing a cannabis industry's job that they should avoid bringing up any illegal activity regarding cannabis in an interview.
Yeah, so bragging about growing primo black market bud or being the top-selling weed slinger in the county probably aren't things you want to say to your new employer. But at the same time, they're telling you to lie to your new employer. And as an employer, I want to know who I'm dealing with. I want the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Well,
The reason why an informed opinion is far more valuable and than a non-informed one.
and which I'm sure would be probably reasons for grounds for dismissal if they found out that you had
Sure.
a record and you didn't provide one, correct?
Sure.
Yeah.
And, in conclusion here, it's still for those people not yet locked up in the lucrative pot job, it might be best to wait until after the interview to get high. The cannabis industry has been fighting hard to eliminate the stoner stereotype. So getting dabbed out of your gourd just before discussing a career in the industry is, the hook to investors for millions of dollars might not be the best way to make a solid first impression.
That's right. Well, the objective, as they say, is to hear an HR manager say, "You're hired."
Not you're high.
You're high. Get out.
There you go. All right.
All right, Irene. Well, what we are starting to do is on the Pace Radio Show, I give an opportunity for joint hosts over there to do a shout out at the end of the program. So I'm going to start allowing you when you're on here to do one, so you have an opportunity to do that.
That's awesome, because I'd really like to thank ProTopShelf.com today for letting me air out of their location. And in addition to that, for all of our listeners, if you go to their website at ProTopShelf.com, he's got right now on there drying tents and bubble bags at 20% off. And if you use the discount code Green Irene, you'll get 20% off. All capital letters, Green Irene, ProTopShelf.com.
Nice, 20% off to our listeners. Give them a shout.
Yeah, indoor growing season's coming. It's time to get those bubble bags and those dry racks. Grow your own.
That's right. Exactly. That's right. It's getting that time of year.
Yes,
okay. That's our Reefer Report for August the 27th, 2018. And in closing, we'd like to say thank you for listening. And if you enjoyed it, please share it with those you love and those you don't. And until next time, don't forget to educate, medicate, and do not incarcerate.
Cheers.
So what are you doing?
Nothing.
Nothing? Why not?
Trying to get on this Lifestyle Radio website.
Sounds like a cool website.
Yeah, it's alright. Oh, wait, I might have it.
You might have it.
You're listening to Lifestyle Radio.
The opinions expressed during this show are those of the individual participants and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of their associated organizations or Lifestyle Radio.